You may have heard this phrase before: I think, therefore I am. In 1637, 384 years ago, the philosopher René Descartes made that statement, and a lot of historians claim that it launched the age of the Enlightenment. The idea is a person's existence is a self-evident, observable fact. So our reality, our truths, must be based on facts, things that are objective and measurable. Now, that might seem obvious to you and me, but that's because we've all grown up on a steady diet of Enlightenment thinking, whether or not we're even aware of it. The Enlightenment's a lot like the water in the fishbowl that we're all swimming in. But in the 1630s, things were different. Saying, I think, therefore I am, kicked off a revolution in the way people saw themselves and the world around them. It called into question all kinds of assumptions and beliefs. Things like kings rule by divine right, or that God controls the weather. Now, René Descartes was not alone. There were plenty of other people in his time who were seeing things in brand new ways. Francis Bacon established what's known as the scientific method. So you experiment and you test things to see what's true or not. And what you cannot prove to be true in the lab, that falls into the category of myth or superstition. So Enlightenment thinking, it was a threat to a lot of religious beliefs for sure, a slippery slope to even wondering about the very existence of God. But it also led to things we appreciate, like our Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Even if, in 1776, all men did not include women or people of color, once the Enlightenment genie was let out of the bottle, it was impossible to put it back in. And ever since, we have called that the March of Progress. A huge part of the Enlightenment was the promise that human life would always improve, and how people treated each other would inevitably get better and better as time went on. The more rational and scientific that society became, the more humane and peaceful and just life would be. And it is true that by many measures, things have improved a lot since then. Women can vote, we no longer have slavery, and even though we still have a long way to go before there's true equality and sexism and racism are eradicated, progress is being made. It takes intentional effort, and there are many challenges, but we believe things will get better. That is Enlightenment thinking. The Enlightenment mindset is also the driving force behind innovations in technology and science. Wi-Fi is awesome and useful, and we know what a virus is and how it spreads, and we can even develop a vaccine in record time. And what the Enlightenment did not count on, though, was human behavior. When we fail to appreciate the divine enlightenment that's already within each of us. So, right alongside all the great benefits of science and ideas about equality, many folks are not always motivated to behave in very enlightened ways. We've learned that for every step of progress toward gender and racial equality, there's plenty of fear and pushback to keep things the way they have been. Advancements in technology often have unintended consequences. The internal combustion engine seemed like a great idea at the time. And even scientific facts that can save lives can be ignored, or they can be used for harmful purposes. That's why today we say we live in a post-Enlightenment world, because despite all the promises of the Enlightenment, there's still plenty of human suffering and injustice and big environmental problems. In so many ways, our quality of life is better than people who lived in the time of René Descartes. But we still find ourselves striving for peace, yearning for racial and economic and environmental justice. We're still waging a battle against an invisible virus, largely because people don't take it seriously, or they think their personal rights are being stolen by doing what's best for everyone. And we have to work hard to overcome ignorance and bigotry, because if you're privileged enough to not suffer those indignities, you might be living the fantasy that they're really not that much of a problem. And no matter how much our quality of life improves, thanks to technology and science, we never ever stop searching for hope and meaning, belonging, purpose, and love. Now, one of the biggest faulty assumptions we have made about the Enlightenment, we just take it for granted, is that it forever placed science and faith at odds with each other. So some folks who are very rational thinkers mistakenly believe that they would need to give up all of that in order to believe in God. Not so. It is true that there are people who read the Bible as if it's a science or a history textbook, that it's divinely inspired, so everything in it must be literally true. So they can have a really hard time reconciling their beliefs about, let's say, the story of creation in Genesis with what we know is objectively true, thanks to Enlightenment science about the age of the universe and evolution. Thing is, that whole conflict has a lot less to do with choosing sides between God and science and a lot more to do with how those people were taught to read the Bible in the first place. Speaking for myself, I don't read the Bible that way, and I don't ask anyone else to either. I appreciate the Bible as a library containing stories from a wide variety of literary genres. Each book is very different. Some contain mythology and epic legend, some are poetry or allegory, some are correspondence, some are prophecy, and some are gospel. You know, the ancient folks who wrote the books of the Bible were never writing history or science or biography as you and I think of those things. They lived in a pre-Enlightenment world. But what they wrote about is true, just the same. And they did that by telling stories and asking questions about peace and justice, family dynamics, good and evil, fear and hope, sadness and joy, belonging and purpose, and ultimately, how and why love is real. All of our most basic realities and needs and aspirations as humans. Each one of those books, in its own way, expresses how the divine is revealed to us on the journey of being human. And you know, by divine, I don't mean something or someone that's separate from us, but something that's very intimate, a deep part of who we are, that we all share, and that knits all of us together. The Bible tells that story, and in that way, I can say the Bible is divinely inspired. So we should never fall into the false trap of ever thinking that to believe in God means that you have to put your belief in science on hold. No, to believe in the divine is to believe in humanity, in you and me. And that's exactly what's meant by saying that we are created in the image of God. God's presence and divine essence is in us and is made real through us. We are God's image. You can think about science and faith like the complementary ingredients in a delicious pie. I've been eating a lot of pie the past few weeks. In the pecan pie that is my life, I need both the pecans and that wonderful gooey sweet stuff to make it complete. I guess I take pecan pie very seriously. Nothing wrong with that. Anyway, science does not cancel out faith, or vice versa. It's all part of the whole. The Enlightenment that brought us measurable scientific knowledge is just one aspect of a greater enlightenment, the way for us to be fully human by seeing and touching and sharing the divine that shines in all of us. You know, to start off the Gospel of John, we are told that Jesus was and is enlightenment itself, shining in the darkness. Present from the beginning of time. It's just a gorgeous metaphor, but it's so much more than a metaphor. It's both a reminder and a challenge. It's a calling for us. It reminds us that light has been around from the start and that light is good. And Jesus embodies that goodness. In his life, he demonstrated what being the light really means. So his story is a calling that you and I have to awaken to that light within us and to be that light. Because, you know, Jesus didn't just arrive on earth to perform a few miracles and speak some wise words, but to show us how to recognize the light that's inside of us and that's within every person, and to call that forward and to let it shine. It's a pretty simple idea, that kind of enlightenment. But of course, it's not always easy, because the enlightenment you and I are created for and called to live understands all too well that in spite of all the ways we may be so advanced scientifically and technologically, for all the material advantages we have, for all the positive steps we've made toward justice and equality, our world still stumbles around in the darkness. People still catch viruses. People continue to be lonely, anxious, and afraid, and suspicious of others who are different. Many continue to value and treat their neighbor unjustly based on the color of their skin or their gender or their sexual orientation. There's still a lot of darkness that surrounds us. If the promise of the Enlightenment was to come true, we would have long ago already eliminated poverty and hunger. We would not even think of debating things like who deserves health care and a decent education and a safe home, and who is not deserving of those things. And we would not be continuing to destroy this paradise God created for us, this earth, just for the sake of making a few more dollars before we die. Being enlightened, as I believe we're made and called to be, is why we gather on Sundays and why we work together to kindle that light within each other and to light up all of those dark places in the world with our knowledge and with our faith. We experienced plenty of darkness this past year, but we've also seen plenty of light as well. The light of God in each of us shines in the way we understand ourselves and the world around us. It shines in how we treat our neighbors. The light shines when we feed the hungry and we stand up for justice. The light shines in our compassion, in our giving, our sharing, and our loving. And if this new year brings us anything, it is the promise that our light is needed more than ever. We think, therefore we are. And we are light, therefore we love.